Okay, I think we'll start here. So, good morning, everybody from Panama. Which is good afternoon to you all there in Ireland. Hopefully, it's as sunny there as it is here. The climate here is absolutely stunning, and it'll be hard to come home today. But we might feel very, very welcome in Panama with our in-country managers Miguel and Hessel and their team, and we've travelled all across Panama this week, and looking at the plantations we have under management, which has been a huge education for me. And it allows a lot of time for sort of business development and looking at opportunities that we have within our own forestry estate and the broader estate, which has been very, very exciting. Further to that as well, we have Caroline Pierce here this morning. Caroline is on her first official trip to Panama as a consul to Panama, and she has a specific responsibility for trade here. And she has very generously afforded some of her time to spend that time with us this morning, and is going to say hello and briefly and introduce our discussion this morning. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Maurice, and good afternoon to everyone joining us from Ireland and I think other locations as well on this webinar. Very welcome. So, as Maurice mentioned, my name is Caroline Pierce, and I am the consul in the Embassy of Ireland, which is based in Bogota in Colombia, but we're accredited to Panama as well. This is my first official visit to Panama, and I'm delighted to be able to join you today and to learn more about the opportunities presented by Greenbelt. I know some of you will be familiar with their work in reforestation based out of Ireland in Virginia, County Cavan, working since 2004, I think, if I'm not wrong. And they're also very experienced in teak plantations and the management of teak plantations in Panama. So I've had an opportunity in the last few days to actually understand the business environment in Panama, which is extremely dynamic, and it focuses itself as a kind of a hub for the region, for Central America, but also for Latin America. And there is, as I said, a dynamic economy, but also, more importantly, probably, there is great political and civil stability as well, which I think is very important in this region. So I'm delighted to welcome you all today, and hope you will listen with eager ears to the different investment opportunities, and then we can all learn more about Greenbelt together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It's delighting to have you here, and Caroline hosted us last night at an official event, so it's been absolutely fabulous to be here with her. So I'll speak a bit more about Greenbelt. We're celebrating our 40th year of business this year. We set up in Cavan in 1982. We've been active in Panama since 2004. So I'll speak a little bit more about Greenbelt in the next few minutes. But it is an exciting year for us, and something we're proud to share with everybody. Thank you again for joining in with us today. So, this is a slide that I like to always introduce in any of my presentations, and I don't think it ever gets old. We look at the sustainable management of forestry as a critical an underlying aspect of everything that we do. It isn't just a nice tagline to bandy about. It is actually something that we very much need to be conscious of, and to promote and encourage, and to explain to people how we operate and how we manage our forests from a sustainable perspective, to make sure that everything is done in the right way for the right reasons, the right tree in the right place, the right harvesting that takes place, that the right amount of applications of silvicultural activity are carried out. And that aids all aspects of the forestry, from everything from a commercial through to a social, and obviously an environmental aspect of them as well. As I say, Greenbelt has been operating in Panama since 2004. Where we've launched recently back in 2017, and started acquiring lands in 2018. We've launched our most recent investment here in Panama. It's an extremely attractive area to do business in. As Caroline mentioned, there's a huge appetite for forestry in particular, but for foreign direct investment into the country. The climate here from a tree growing perspective is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to show you a brief video a little while that shows you how quickly the trees respond to good management. And to good soil, which is extremely positive from our perspective. The land is not only is it available, but it is also affordable, particularly from an Irish perspective, very, very affordable. And Since 2004, Greenbelt have raised more than €9 million invested across Panama. This is an image taken from one of our forests under management. This forest is only 3 years of age, and you can see the height of the teak trees here. You can see the management that has gone on. There's some thinning taking place, there's some branch cleaning taking place to allow the canopy and to close over. And you look then at the ultimate, the round log timber that is harvested from this forest. And here's some of the staff that work in the field. These guys are absolutely critical to the success of all of this operation. You can have as many spreadsheets as you like, but unless the work is done well on the ground, the trees won't grow and they won't achieve the targets that we're successfully achieving as it stands now. Excuse me. To give you an idea of what is under management already, we have 256 hectares of land under management. Of that, 212 are actively planted. The balance is preserved biodiversity. Much of that is in mangrove, which in very, very basic, simple terms are forests in the sea. And they're preserved across the plantation, particularly on the boundaries. So you'll see them in the very dark green aspects there. I walked and visited all of these forests over the last couple of days and went through all the access paths and tracks, and we discussed thinning programs and profiles. It's been absolutely fascinating to physically touch and feel the trees that are growing, and I think if I stood there long enough, I'd actually probably see them grow. The growth rates are phenomenal, and the timber quality is absolutely superb. We spent a lot of time in a timber processing facility then yesterday evening, and that showed me the potential of where the timber can get to, and I think there's greater potential in teak than we've even realized to date. So our project obviously is to raise about €1.5 million to close out the silvicultural aspects of the operation. The project is already registered with the gold standard and voluntary carbon market, and it is already registered with FSC. And that just gives everybody a little bit more comfort as to standards that we set from a forestry management perspective, particularly when it is remote to most people. And this is just a very brief video that we'd like to show you just of some of the plantations. Abrupt end to that video. I'd like to introduce Miguel Villarino, who's our in-country manager here, who is a mine of information and knowledge, and is a driving force and a passionate force behind teak in Panama.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Here's morning, so we're going to enjoy the rest of the day with our friend Maurice. So we manage Panama Reforestation Services, which is a company hired by Greenbelt in Panama, manages over 20,000 hectares of gross land. Of those, about 11,000 are planted with teak mostly, and some local species. We are a team of over 100 people, small management, but big workforce. We export around 800 containers of teak from our mature or more mature forests. Actually, some of those forests used to be Greenbelts, and they successfully sold them in 2014 and made a bundle. So you guys should take advantage of the opportunity. As Maurice says, land is available. We have the best genetics. We have some Malaysian clones that are growing fantastic. They're probably 2 or 3 times faster growing than teak trees. And you should not worry about the quality, because we've seen plantations that are being harvested right now that are 10, 11 years old, and the hardwood is great. So it's a future for teak, and it's the moment to get in. I think prices for wood will go up as demand increases with population growth. Most of the wood goes to India. About 95% of it goes to India. It's a very traditional wood, and some of it goes to Vietnam and China, maybe compounded 10%. And we're working with a lot of ideas. We've been discussing with Maurice about different options to add value. So this is a time to get in. Don't miss out. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Miguel. Straight from the horse's mouth there. So we have, as Miguel says, we spent a lot of time discussing not just the existing plantations and the value from the clear fell timber out of it, but also the opportunities around timber thinnings and adding a little bit extra value to the plantations that Greenbelt are involved in, but the benefits of having that economy of scale being part of an 11,000 hectare gross plantation, if you call it that, and the value and the benefit that would bring to Greenbelt. Two of those I already mentioned in terms of the carbon trading platform and also the certification. So all of those were made much more easy with the grand scale that Miguel and his team manage under control here in Panama. So to speak briefly then about the structure of the fund that we have here, it's an Irish Registered Alternative Investment Fund, registered with the Central Bank in Ireland, and we set up a structure in Panama. So we've our limit. It's a limited partnership, and we have a structure established here in Panama, and that acquires land and employs obviously the local teams here to carry out all the work that's needed. So the fund that we're structuring here is called Panama T2 or PT2, as people call it. And the options that exist are to either manage it all the way through to clear fell, or as we successfully achieved in our first exercise over here, a mid-rotation sale to what's called a TIMO, a Timberland Investment Management Organization, typically out of the United States. It's probably a larger institutional investment fund that is looking to consolidate assets around Panama. So they're the two options that we're looking at, and that's what we're focusing on, is that sale in 2027 into a larger institutional fund. That means there's about a 5-year term left here. The returns we are probably conservatively looking at our entry at this point are 5% per annum compounded over the term. Again, we would like to think that the certification and the carbon market will add added value to that, extra value to that return. We haven't factored that in, but we would like to think that this is going to be something that's extremely attractive to people looking to acquire what we have under management today. Looking at the numbers, as we say, we invest a further 1.5 million to close out the fund over 5 years. We'll exit in 27, and the return from that 1.5 million only will be approximately 1.9 million euros, which will be shared obviously pro rata to the investment term or the investment amount. Well, then to perspective, if you invested 100,000 euros with us over the next 5 years, you're likely to return about 127,000 euros to you. Teak and Forestry in Panama is treated very favourably. They're certainly trying to encourage more and more forestry. Similar to Ireland, more forestry is encouraged. They're a little bit more efficient and effective at getting trees in the ground here than we are in Ireland, unfortunately. There's no corporation taxes paid on profits from the sale in Panama, which is obviously positive. And any of those sales taxes which would be attributed to the land at the point of sale or a movable property tax would have been factored into that return number that I mentioned. If we sell the shares, which is obviously likely at mid-rotation sale, the double tax treaty allows for capital gains tax to be paid in Ireland alone. So that's the only tax implication that you will find. So that's positive, certainly, from that, and certainly a very transparent way of doing it. And this is why we spent so much time and effort in getting the structure established in Ireland and having it structured and established the way we have done to make the exit as clean and clear and transparent and easy for investors to be able to understand and obviously to exit when necessary. I can't stress the value of it enough, the carbon value that we've seen here. I mean, the rate of growth of the teak in Panama is phenomenal. We would estimate that there's 17 tons of carbon per hectare captured on an annual basis. To put that into perspective, an oak tree in Ireland will capture about, over its lifetime, will capture an average of about 3 tons of carbon per hectare per annum. So it's from that perspective, the value that it will add to larger companies. We won't get into why or how they might want to offset their carbon, but certainly, when companies are looking to offset carbon, Panama is a fundamental tool to actually get very significant bang for their buck in terms of carbon offset value. And increasingly, we're seeing the ESG benefits of forestry investment being more and more important in people's decision-making process with an investment and with forestry management. That it isn't just simply the commercial returns, which are obviously very favourable and very strong and positive, but there's also the environmental and economic and social benefits that are associated with it. For those who aren't that familiar with Panama, where our plantations are, in very broad terms, are within that circle. It's called Darien region. It's a region in Panama. It's at the end of the Pan American Highway. It's a bumpy road, some questionable driving, but nonetheless, we got back safe enough. But Panama it's an absolutely fascinating country, and as much as I've heard about it and seen it, actually physically being in the country and seeing the people, the city, excuse me, and how it operates has given me a real sense of the potential and the value and the opportunity that exists here, and how incredible a place it is to do business in. Obviously, it's famous for the canal, which is, there's a stock image from it there, but it's, you know, the free trade ports. It's an absolutely incredible place, and it's vibrant and full of life. And thankfully, it's a very politically stable location, and the economy is obviously pegged to the US dollar, which again makes the conversion quite simple and quite understandable. Land prices, as Miguel mentioned, have always been favourable from an investment perspective, and they continue to be so. And actually, land prices have even softened a little bit in the last couple of years, due to the price of beef actually dropping. So beef farmers, under a little bit of pressure, are more likely to sell their land. The climate, it is a tropical climate, but it stays within a range of temperature. So roughly between 28 and 36 degrees. There is a rainy season. We got splashed a little bit here just at the tail end of the dry season, but the growth rates are absolutely phenomenal. There's a deep, rich soil here, which we've identified obviously for being optimal for growing teak. And as Miguel mentioned, there's other sort of native species that grow, take a little bit longer than teak, but are just as vibrant and wonderful and valuable. But the infrastructure then that we have around forestry and to extract timber has improved. So when we started here in 2004, I heard more and more stories of the access in and out of forests being washed away and being inaccessible. And in a very brief period of time, that infrastructure has developed significantly. So all of that adds to ultimately the long-term value of the timber, because the easier it is to take timber out of the forest and get it to market, obviously the lower the cost, which is a better return per unit of material. So the roads I travelled were a lot more accessible than anything previously, which is obviously a great positive. When I mentioned that the tax incentives that currently exist and continue to exist here, and particularly from an investment and a forestry investment side of things, and we're not alone. Miguel mentioned they have 11,000 hectares of forestry under management, and that's from some very large institutions across the States and Central Europe, in particular Switzerland, which obviously is something that we have benefited from. But also, I think, probably gives people a little more comfort to know that we are not alone and we're not the pioneer in this space. So it was really interesting to actually track trees from all the way from a nursery. Obviously, that's me, especially in a nursery in Panama, but looking at plants that are only 5 weeks old in the root ball, and that's going to be transplanted to field in a couple of weeks. So it's amazing. The root structure is already well developed. This is all developed. These are Malaysian clones developed from cuttings, so the provenance is clean and clear. And the growth rate is absolutely phenomenal, and the performance rate is amazing. And to see the operation in full effect is gives us great comfort and great confidence in the future success of all of the teak. This is where our plantations would have come from originally, so we're quite a bit further advanced. This is the youngest plantation we have that was planted in 2020, and that was just a snapshot as we walked through it to take a view of it. So you'll see that there's some pruning done on the lower leaves to add stability to the tree, in case of any winds that are there. But the canopy is developing strongly. I mean, the leaf, to put it into perspective, is about the size of a basketball. The leaves are absolutely massive, which obviously again is the route to carbon capture and through sequestration through photosynthesis. So it's absolutely fabulous to see it in real life. And any of the old leaves at the bottom that are cut away obviously will degrade, and the biomass, the energy and the nutrients from those will leach back into the soil. So there's sort of natural fertilization that occurs there. Once timber is harvested, it's all harvested by chainsaw for many reasons, but it's the right and best way to manage these forests. They're cut into predetermined lengths and stacked on roadside, and then obviously you can see they're loaded into containers and shipped to markets. I mean, we're exploring other markets other than India at the moment, but I mean, that is the predominant market for this teak material, and it doesn't look like that appetite is going to be sated anyway soon. So it's really fascinating to see how it is all harvested, how the tree selection goes at a thinning process. We can apply a lot of what we do here in Ireland to it, but these guys have really understand the value of the timber. We're increasing the value of what we would call waste timber here as well. You'll see, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor on it, you'll see the hardwood here of the timber and the value that's in. So it's transported in the round as opposed to being squared off, because the end market prefers it in that manner, and they can process it then in country. Of course, we do get some what we call squared off logs, excuse me, and those squared off logs obviously have their own market. There's some indigenous markets here as well, but of course they can be transported in 20-foot or 40-foot containers. Landscapers use them, furniture makers use them. So there's plenty of opportunity and scope for the end use market here as well. But the quality of the timber is absolutely outstanding. You can see the beautiful color and tone across the timber. The sustainability of our operations out here are very important to us, and which is one of the reasons that we wanted to come and visit as well, to observe the operations in person and to see the claims of sustainability, how well they're actually practiced, and we've been left with absolutely no questions whatsoever around it. The staff are extremely well looked after. They're a very committed and dedicated workforce. They look after the trees extremely well. They know exactly what they're meant to do and what not to do. The habitat protection and the mangrove protection is paramount. There's nothing touched around there. There's no animals harmed. It's to see the wild animals trekking through the forest. Once you get over the initial scare of hearing howling monkeys in the trees, it's absolutely it's fascinating to see it. All of the work obviously is out in rural communities, and this is the work that's carried out here is absolutely essential to the maintenance and sustainability of those communities. And speaking to those workers with the aid of a translator, obviously, they really enjoy what they do, and they value the work. Some of the guys have been working with Miguel and his team for 15, 16 years, which is, I think, is a testament to Miguel and how they operate their operation. And we look then to put a little bit of focus on not only the commercial side of things, but also how this can help from the environmental side of operations. So the afforestation, obviously, I mentioned the carbon capture per hectare on an annual basis is extremely positive and much higher than many countries. The biodiversity is not only protected, but it's also further enhanced through operations. Animals, mangroves, etc., are maintained to a very high standard. By planting trees and through the application of the silvicultural processes, erosion, soil erosion is minimized from the heavy rainfall that occurs here on an annual basis. Very often you'd have seen rivers running down roads and fields being washed, the topsoil being washed out of fields. This is prevented to a large degree through the introduction of forestry and well-maintained forestry, not just teak, but the native species that are done in the boundaries and in other locations as well. And of course, the community benefits I've mentioned numerous times here already. The employment, the long-term employment and the value that brings to local communities. Even, for example, we stayed in Santa Fe, which is a very small little village. We stayed in a hotel there, and we ate locally, and all of that is income into a small local community. Very, very minor, small snapshot that kind of gives an idea, not just the timber value, but the additional values and along the value chain that can be brought in here. We mentioned the certifications that are in place. So FSC has already been achieved. Gold standard has been achieved from the carbon side of things. This ties in with what Greenbelt are achieving in Ireland under PEFC and the verified carbon standard. So all of this is designed to give, well, we know we've always done things right. These are designed to give those who are looking to invest with us and work with us a little bit more comfort into how we operate and the value that we're going to bring to plantations and to forestry management in general. I'll wrap this up now in the next few minutes, but I just wanted to explain a little about who Greenbelt are. As I mentioned, we've turned 40 this year, which is in our eyes an extremely positive and seismic milestone and achievement. And 40 years in business, and over that time we would have estimated that we've planted about 500 million trees across Ireland, the UK and Panama. 500 million trees is a significant number of trees, and looking at it roughly, it's about €100 trees per individual in Ireland, which, you know, we didn't plant them all for nobody has a claim over them, but I think it's pretty good when you look at everybody that there's 100 trees behind them. I think that's phenomenal. And our vision is to obviously to keep growing and keep planting trees and to keep adding value to those trees across the country and across every operation that we work with. We have 16 professional foresters. We have a gross team of 32 people, all headquartered out of Virginia in Cavan. We have a senior staff ecologist who helps us with the environmental aspect of our applications and operations. Our administration team out of Virginia in Cavan, we've always been based there and never moved, not likely to either. We've established more than 425,000 acres of private forestry, just in Ireland alone. Our harvesting operations, which again are obviously sustainable, anything that we put down is ultimately replanted. That is a commitment we take very, very seriously. So even if people have clear-felled a forest and have no appetite themselves to replant, we can offer a service where we will find an alternative purchaser for the land who will take on that replanting obligation. And we are adding value to all our timber and all our assets that we manage across the country on a regular basis. And more on that another time. These are some of the countries we've operated in. Obviously, our predominant focus is in Ireland. We've operated in the UK, across Scotland and the UK, into Central and Eastern Europe. We've spent time in South America, significantly in Paraguay. And of course, I'm speaking to you here live from Panama in Central America, which is probably an area that is extremely close to our hearts, having spent as much time as we have here. Nearly 50% of our time in business has coincided with our time in Panama. So we can't forget what we all do it for. It's the long-term sustainability, it's the future for our families and our children, and forestry is a wonderful wealth protector. I'm going to wrap it up here now, but if anyone has any questions, if they want to raise a hand or call out, I'm happy to answer a question. Miguel and Caroline are here as well, and they've stayed with us for the morning. So I look forward to any questions that you might have. And thank you very much for joining in this morning.